One of the major problems in the writing of Philippine history stems from inadequate knowledge of historical conditions in the rural Philippines. The definition of Filipino cultural minority was and always will be the object of concern for many scholars. Records of prehistoric scholarship present us with many theories on how our race came to be. However, these remain open-ended. There is a need to evaluate and validate available facts and data. So for today's topic, we are presented with three arguments about the origin of Filipino race. First is the racial affinity of Filipinos with Malays and the so-called Aboriginal groups. Second, the validity of the waves of migration theory. And third, the accuracy of Maractus as prehistoric document.
Racial affinity of Filipinos with Malays and the so-called Aboriginal groups. Anthropometric measurements and ocular inspections of skeletal remains, there is inadequacy of evidences. Important factors such as genetic studies and historical events are not examined. Conclusions reached are biased. The problem not only lies in these theories, but on how we accept these assertions without questions on the basis that these are presented by well-known scholars. We are taught in our school to be proud of our Malayan heritage and encouraged to strengthen our ties with other Malays in Southeast Asia. But Filipinos wishing to migrate in Singapore have to deny this fundamental identification because the Singapore government rejects the classification of Filipinos as Malays. But if we Filipinos are not Malay, what ethnicity we are? Officially, Singapore recognized immigrant from other neighboring Philippines as part of the racial category referred to as others.
The validity of the waves of migration theory. Noted social scientist Henry Otley Beyer believes that Filipinos descended from different groups that came from Southeast Asia in successive waves of migration. Each group had a distinct culture with its own customs and traditions. So these waves included the following. So first is from 250 years ago, which is called the dawn of man. Then 30,000 years ago, the Negritos. 6,000 years ago, a group from Indonesia, and 3,000 years ago, the civilized and seafaring Malays. Archaeology plays an important role in the attempt to support this theory. Again, a significant factor such as geographical location of the Philippines was not considered. It is assumed that early Filipinos borrowed their culture from people whom they came in contact. In the process, local developments were ignored. On the basis of available material, there is a need to reconsider the validity of this theory. Some facts presented remain debatable. Evidences do not give us a clear idea of who these ancient inhabitants were.
Accuracy of Maractus as a prehistoric document. The story known as the Maractus is a legend. They are about the 10 datus or chiefs who escaped the tyranny of Datu Makatunaw of Borneo and immigrated to the island of Panay. Once there, they supposedly bought the lowland plains of the island from Maricudo, the leader of the indigenous Aitas, for the price of a solid gold salakot or hat. According to the legend, these 10 chiefs and their families are the very ancestors of the entire Visayan population. Actually, this is the legend that has been celebrated yearly in the Ati-Atihan Festival since the late 1950s, when it became a part of the annual feast of the Santo Niño in Calibo, Aklan. While this account gives us an insight on the history of the Visayan people, its authenticity is in question. The different merits on the written accounts and oral narratives in evaluating the Maractus as a historical document are disturbing. There are those who claim that Maractus as a legend or folklore. For this reason, the document needs to be analyzed on how much of it is historic and folkloric.
While we are already familiar with the more well-known controversies such as Jose Rizal's retraction, here are some lesser-known controversies that are really worth knowing. After all, they do form a part of the Philippine history. Contrary to popular belief that Filipinos lived and educated during the Spanish era, the inhabitants were actually one of the most educated people in all of Asia, and it is due to the implementation of the public school system by the Spanish government, which started with the Educational Decree Act of 1863. The act provided for the creation of separate public school for Filipino boys and girls and the teaching of free compulsory education. The girls were taught not only domestic lessons, but also subjects such as Spanish and French languages and the sciences. Manuel Quezon himself is a product of the Spanish public school system. He attested the existence and the excellence of Spanish education long before the Americans came. Unfortunately, American propaganda against the Spanish made a very negative impression of the Spanish educational system.
Jose Borgos was framed for the Cavite Mutiny. According to the account of two Spanish clergymen captured during the Revolution, the failed mutiny was in fact a plot by the Spanish friar to eliminate Jose Borgos, who was then the foremost champion of secular priests. To that end, they sent a Franciscan friar named Claudio del Arceo to Cavite and foment unrest among the soldiers, promising them money and that a great fleet from the United States in the name of Father Borgos would arrive to assist them. After the mutiny unfolded, the friar then convinced Rafaela de Izquierdo that Borgos planned it all by giving him a banquet as well as a huge bribe.
Another controversy is that Grigoria Del Pilar was Aguinaldo's assassin. Admittedly, most of Del Pilar's fame came from his death defending Tirad Pass from advancing American forces during the Philippine-American War. Yet, for all his bravery or foolhardiness depending on one's view, Del Pilar also has his own plethora of controversies, and one of those is that Del Pilar was also Emilio Aguinaldo's assassin. As someone who reportedly exhibited sadistic tendencies on captured friars, he made one clean the toilet with his bare hands, according to one story, and with his unwavering loyalty to the president, Del Pilar was the ideal verdugo for Aguinaldo. Accordingly, it is believed that Del Pilar and his men were behind the killing of Antonio Luna after being ordered by Aguinaldo to eliminate him. By extension, Del Pilar was also said to have personally conducted the arrest, torture, and execution of many of Luna's officers.
The issue that Miguel Malvar, not Manuel Quezon, should be the second Philippine president. According to his supporters, including Jejomar Binay, Malvar deserves to be recognized as such in line with the natural order of succession. With the capture of Aguinaldo and the surrender of Mariano Trias, his designated successor and Malvar's direct superior, it fell upon the general from Batangas to lead the remnants of the revolutionary forces. His presidency was also recognized as legitimate by members of the Hong Kong Junta, the Overseas Council, which procured arms and campaigned for foreign recognition of Philippine independence. During his period of resistance, up until his surrender, Malvar ran the fledgling republic as a chief executive and as head of the armed forces, just as a real president would.
An ancient family owns the entire Philippines. According to the modern-day descendants of the Tagian-Taliano clans, their ancestor used to rule over the land called Mahalika, an empire which consisted of the Philippines, the rest of Southeast Asia, the Marianas Island, and even Hawaii. The clan counts Lapu-Lapu, Suliman, Lacandula, and other prominent Filipino rulers as their descendants. Under the rule of Loisong Tagian-Taliano, Maharlika was said to have been one of the most prosperous countries in Asia. The clan also claims that their sovereignty over the Philippines was recognized by the different colonial powers, Spain, Britain, and the US, through the issuance of 3 documents all of which were unfortunately thrown out by the Court of Appeal in 2002 for being spurious. In 2012, Salam Lakan Luisong Tagyan, who claimed to be from the clan, made headline when he filed his candidacy for senator while proclaiming he was the rightful ruler of the country.